What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Inventing the Future podcast. I'm your host, Julian, but actually, not today.
You're not.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And you'll see why. So it has now been over a year since I left my full-time at Meta to take the quantum leap into startup life. And it's been a roller coaster. A lot of pivots, a lot of iterations, a lot of painful lessons have been earned and gained. But throughout that time, I've had the pleasure to build along with my co-founder, David. And I'm doing something a little different here where just to share a little bit more of the journey and how things have gone, kind of having him interview me and ask some questions to share a little bit more about the journey. So, David, how does it feel to be on the other end of the table?
So much power.
So
much power. I'm excited for it. I think it's gonna be a fun convo.
Yeah. Don't abuse your power too much.
We'll see.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but I think just to dive right in, like I think a fun place to start would be to tell us the story of like how you started the podcast and like what your inspiration was. Like why do you even want to start a podcast in the first place?
Well, yeah. Why did I start this? So actually, this is my second podcast that I've started. I had previously started one called Infinite Minds. It was more like personal growth related. And now this one, Inventing the Future, is more on startups and entrepreneurship. And the reason externally, like the big sort of idea behind it initially was, hey, the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. That's like a really cool quote from one of my mentors and role models, Peter Diamandis. And for me, it was, okay, if that's true, how do I help other people become exposed to some of these big problems around the world so that it can gather like more energy and attention? So, and not only that, but specifically speak to the people that are at the forefront of solving these problems. Like how are they so bold to take an initiative to solve a massive problem? Like, do they not care about the risk? Like, how are they thinking about this? I was very curious about that. And then more internally, I think two of the most important skills to develop are your ability to communicate and the quality of the questions that you ask.
Totally.
Right? Especially in today's world with like ChatGPT, you can ask any question. What matters is more so what questions are you asking? So I think the science of asking questions is really fun. Last piece I'll mention here is around also the impact that I want to have. Like, I think a lot of like, I want to create products and companies that like impact millions and billions of people. But for me, it's also being able to have an impact with thought leadership and ideas. And I do think there's problems that can't be solved just with products and companies. Sometimes it's like knowledge or a piece of inspiration that you're able to communicate and transmit to someone.
I think that's great. And I love what you say about boldness. I feel like life itself is a bold bet. So it's all just about like which bold bets are you going to make inside this bold bet of life itself. I know you mentioned Peter Diamandis, but I don't know if there's any other podcasts that you've been inspired by or have influenced your communication styles and the way you want to shape this experience? Yeah.
Actually, one of the big inspirations for me was Tim Ferriss's podcast. It was actually, I think, the first podcast I ever listened to probably, but or one of the ones that I consistently listened to. And it was really impactful because it came at a time in my life where I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of ambition, but I didn't really know what to do with that ambition. I felt like misguided, and Tim Ferriss just interviewed a lot of world-class people, deconstructed them, was able to really get to the core of who they are and how they did what they did. And I learned and grew so much from that, that it had such a profound impact that it really like had a deep impact later on in wanting to start the podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the ambient ambition that you mentioned there kind of leads into this next question of like, what is it that really got you interested in startups in the first place?
Yeah. With startups, I would say, ambition is at the core of that in many ways. But there's two main stories. The first one is I learned how to code when I was 13. So when I was 13, one of my dad's friends happened to be a computer scientist, a software engineer, and offered me the opportunity to learn how to code. And it was really great. And it was completely a miracle too, because I grew up in a city in Texas named McAllen, Texas. And it was pretty underdeveloped city, not a lot of tech. So quite a miracle that my dad's friend knew how to code. And we basically built an iPad, a calculator for the iPad when it first came out, because for whatever reason, the iPad doesn't come with a calculator. And it was a simple thing getting started, but over 30,000 people downloaded it. And it really just taught me that, wow, like apart from just being a tool, programming is a platform that allows you to enact meaningful change. So it really inspired me to want to study computer science and kind of made me curious just about building, tinkering, and led me to develop several other apps later on. So that was the first part. And the second big part of like getting interested in startups, I would say has to do more with the ambition part of it. And the way I describe this is that ever since, I think one of my unique superpowers is my ambition. Almost everything that I am and have achieved has been a result of that ambition. But the thing is that my ambition initially manifested itself as a desire for financial wealth. So for whatever reason, I just wanted to be super rich. And this was fine, but in many ways it was limiting, because what I didn't realize at the time is that this was a very self-centered ambition, kind of like mostly for my own benefit. And as a result, I did a few things like learn how to code, started like an eBay business that did fairly well. But for the most part, I felt misaligned. I felt like I wasn't doing what I needed to do to truly live in alignment to that ambition that I felt. I overdosed on video games, never read unless I had to. I ate a lot of junk food, and just wasn't doing what I needed to do. But it wasn't until the Tim Ferriss podcast kind of started to get me in this personal growth development sort of world, and started like opening up worlds. And then I discovered Tony Robbins, like a personal development sort of guru and life coach. And I went to one of his seminars when I was 19, sophomore in college. And it was completely transformative. These seminars are like 4 or 5 day events, full immersion. You're learning about life, about limiting beliefs, about how to break them. Basically all the things you were supposed to be taught in school, but no one taught us. And a lot of breakthroughs that I experienced. I was a sponge because I like wanted all these things and didn't know them. But everything after that seminar transformed for me. Like I stopped playing video games almost entirely. I ended up reading. I started reading way more. I started meditating, and I started eating super healthy also, because better health, more energy, more ability to do cool shit. Yeah. So the deeply impactful thing about that to me was that it brought up this interesting question, like, wait a second, where did all of this potential come from? Like, was that always within myself? How did I transform so radically? Like, what the hell? What's happening here? And it created this sort of obsession about figuring out not only how I can empower myself, but also how I can empower others to discover and manifest the infinite potential that they have within themselves. Like if I had something I didn't even know was there, can you imagine other people, like the hidden potentials that they have buried within themselves that they don't even know what's there? So that's what sparked a lot of the obsession and passion and purpose. And from that place, that connects to this original question of where the interest in startups came from. Well, in order to live this purpose, I think that technology and startups are the way to scale your impact to millions and billions of people around the world. So that's kind of what my ambition aligns with, and the tech kind of fits into that scope as well.
I feel like there's two things that really stick out there from that story. It's like, one is like the hidden potential part. The other is that your like entrepreneurship journey in a way started with like learning how to code. It's almost like someone taught you how to lay bricks, and then you realized like, oh, I can build houses.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
So I don't know. How do you think about that flywheel of like, is it learning the capabilities that usually comes first, or is it having like the dream?
Well, I think it could come in either direction. For me, I do think learning the foundation of laying the bricks, aka learning how to code, was very fundamental. Like it made a huge impact in my life, and it also exposed me to a lot of opportunities. Like I became a co-founder for my first startup in college. But I didn't start it. I was invited to become a co-founder. Why? Because of my technical ability. So my technical ability, the laying the bricks down, was the thing that exposed me to opportunities that further nurtured and gave me the exposure around these sort of things. But of course, they're like, in contrast, my CEO for that previous startup, Bryce, he came from the opposite end of like, I just care about this problem super deeply, and I don't care what I need to do or what skills I have. I want to solve this, and I'm going to figure out a way. So it comes from both ends, and I actually resonate with both of those angles. But I think I got pretty fortunate in developing one of the most important superpower skills of programming that gave me a lot of opportunities to further nurture this interest and passion and obsession with startups.
I think that's a really good point, actually, that, founders come in all shapes and sizes and stripes, and it's like wherever you are is the right place to start, essentially.
Yeah.
Like there's not a right way to do it. But you touched on, I know like your first like real startup experience was in college, and you were working on this for a number of years, but that, in the middle of that experience during college, there was this crazy kind of life event that happened that was really just, in a way, changed everything. I don't know if you want to like let us in on your world there and kind of take us through it.
Oof, yeah. Story and vulnerability time. Yeah, this is probably the craziest story in my life. But all right, so what happened is I was in college studying computer science at Texas A&M University, and junior year going into senior year, like I was like, all right, I need an internship, so prepared really hard, did a lot of leak code, practice problems, and a lot of interviews, a lot of rejections, but finally got an offer with Goldman Sachs and went and did an internship in New York. Super fun, super cool, enjoyed it a lot, and ended up getting a full-time offer. And so now I had a full-time offer, and I was going into my final
You're all set?
year. I'm set, right? Like, cool, I have a good job. And at the same time, as you alluded to and I mentioned, I had the startup Vise. And for a little more context, this first startup Vise, short for Incentivizing Good, was a Glassdoor for low-income workers, for factory workers in Mexico. For those unfamiliar, Glassdoor is a platform where you can write anonymous reviews about your experience working at a company. Therefore, it creates transparency into the working conditions so that you can get to know a job before you get it. And that, in turn, the idea would hold the companies accountable to actually making sure they treat their workers well. Glassdoor works really well for these like higher skilled workers and in developed countries. But we saw an opportunity to do this in a country like Mexico and for factory workers where many of these workers get overworked, abused, like the abuse is way worse. And many of these factories have insane turnover rates of 90 to 400% of their workforce every year. So that was the sort of big thing we were doing. And it was mission impossible in many ways because we're in college, super inexperienced. We're doing this in Mexico. I'm the only one that speaks Spanish because I'm Colombian. And our user is across another country and another border. And, the manufacturing industry is very hard for them to like try something new. So it was mission impossible, but we loved it.
Against you for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it was difficult, but so that's the context. I was working on that. So I got the full-time offer from Goldman, and I had the startup on the side I was working on, and I really enjoyed it. Thought I was getting a lot of value from it, learning a lot. I was leading a team of 5 other engineers as a CTO, doing a lot of things. So basically, this is all to frame the context that I ended up doing something pretty unethical. I was like, hey, I want to focus more time on the startup. So I decided to hire freelancers to do my homework using Upwork. Ouch. So it went well until it didn't.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So on the last day of my last semester, when I was taking my last final, I got an email from the honor system office.
From fate itself.
From fate itself. Exactly. And yeah, they told me like, yo, we want to speak. And I was like, about what? What do you mean? So I went with, I met with them, and basically tons of evidence. So for context, I had previously used Upwork for the eBay business I had mentioned before to hire people to like do a lot of the work. And I was like, great, freelancing is a great way to buy yourself time. So I ended up using the same Upwork account for school. I don't know, being lazy. And so it had my name and things like that. And basically tons of evidence. And I admitted to what I ended up doing. And yeah, it was not a pretty sight. For more context here, I have to tell my parents what happened. And both of them are very academic. My mom is a microbiologist, and she teaches at a university, microbiology, and does research. So very academic, PhD. My dad is a physician, a doctor, a gastroenterologist, a stomach doctor, so super academic as well. They're super high integrity people, incredible people, super grateful to have them. But then they look at me and they find this out. They're like, what the, like, how could it be possible that our son did this, right? They couldn't get themselves to understand what was going on here. And so then it came to time that I would have the hearing with the university for them to decide my fate. So we met, and basically, fortunately, I did not get expelled, but I got suspended for a year, got Fs in like 6 classes. GPA dropped from like a 3.9 to a 2.8. And yeah, it was pretty bad. And I had to tell Goldman Sachs what happened, right? Because I was like, yo, can't go to New York anymore. I guess I have to finish school. Maybe I didn't have to, but I guess I had to.
How'd they feel about that?
So Goldman was like, yo, give us 2 weeks to think about this, and then we'll get back to you. I'm like, great, thanks. I'll wait. After 2 excruciating weeks, they called me and let me know that we can no longer give you your offer. We're rescinding it. And I was like, great. I'll go back home and live with my parents. So I go back home and live with my parents. And basically at this point, I felt like the only thing that I had was the thing that in a way got me in trouble, the startup. But the startup was not in a good point. It'd been like 2 years of building, and we had almost no traction. We had just lost 2 of our best engineers. The people that were still there weren't that committed. And so the only thing I felt that I had was slipping from my hands. And also my parents, my dad was like, why are you doing the startup, basically? So I was like, great, thanks for the support, Dad. But then the real big turning point here was that I realized that, and by the way, this was the opportunity for all this personal growth and development work that I did with the 6 Tony Robbins seminars I had been to really come into fruition. And the mindset shift.
The big test.
This was the big test. The mindset shift here was, wait a second, if I have to go back to school, that means I can do internships again. And Goldman Sachs was great opportunity, but I can do better. So went super heads down again, round 2 of crazy technical interview prep. And after 39 interviews with like 18 companies and tons of rejections, finally ended up getting offers from Meta, from Facebook, from Google, and from LinkedIn and another company. So I ended up accepting Facebook or Meta's offer, and as well as LinkedIn's. And yeah, it was crazy surreal to have overcome the difficulties in that way. And both internships were insane. Ended up accepting Meta's full-time offer, where I was there for a whopping 9 months until made the quantum leap to full startup life. So yeah, it was great. But to kind of like summarize here on the big lessons, at the end of the day, I did something like very unethical. It was not good. And I asked myself, I did a silent retreat the day that I got suspended from the university, a 5-day silent retreat, no tech, no nothing, no people, just me, myself, and I, and a bunch of journals. And I tried to dig really deep into like what happened, why did I do this, etc. And the core thing that I realized is that I greatly valued things like learning, growth, and impact so strongly that I decided to sacrifice the value of integrity in place of those other values of learning, growth, and impact. But what I realized is that integrity is such a fundamental and value that no matter how valuable other values are, you should never sacrifice your integrity for these other values. So that was the core thing, the core mistake I made. And the second and final thing I'll mention as a big lesson is that I really realized, given how I adopted a mindset in the circumstance and managed to overcome it, that the only real failure in life is the failure to learn. You're going to do stupid shit. You're going to mess up. You're going to get knocked down on the floor, especially if you're like a founder and taking a lot of risk. It's going to happen even more, but you're going to get knocked on your ass. And when you get like a 50 or a 0 on a test, the last thing you want to do is like look at why you got the 50. You're just so mad you don't even want to look at that shit. But that's where the biggest growth opportunity exists. You have to look beyond the negative emotions to see the opportunity that exists within yourself. So I was fortunate to have realized that, and that allowed me to push past the experience and grow even more than I could have. And now I think I'm in a way better place than I could have ever been before. So I'm grateful that I got caught in a way.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the first time you told me that story, it's just so crazy. I feel like one day maybe there'll be a movie about it. It just seems scripted in a way of like, it's almost like the harder you fall, like the harder you learn in a way. And it's like this story in the arc like sets you up in a way for like such a hard fall of like these contrasting values and stuff. And it all came to fruition and all came to a head and kind of collapsed at once, and you had to pick yourself back up. So would you say like that this experience was a gift in a way?
It was 100% a gift. It was definitely a gift because, I think the dangerous thing here is that I was doing something unethical and that lacked integrity. And it's very likely that if you do something that's not right and you get away with it, I think it's quite likely that subconsciously you start to gain better confidence, or like more confidence around maybe doing the wrong things. And I think the gift here is that I was able to be exposed of this value that was at fault and really reemphasize the importance of it and overdrive. Yeah, I had no choice. So I really, really, really like almost like deconstructed my values and reshaped them, and really the authenticity that I carry myself with now day to day is, I think, one of the values that I care the most about, right? Authenticity and integrity. So yeah, it was a gift.
So thank you for letting us in. I know it's a really vulnerable story, but so I guess at the end of it, you end up at Meta. You said you're there for 9.5, 10 months roughly. You worked so hard to get there in this really amazing position. So like, what is it that made you want to take this like mega leap away from, this amazing, beautiful, well-paying thing into the unknown world of entrepreneurship and full-time founderhood?
Yeah, I mean, I do miss my salary, but no, it's a good question. And my parents were also like, "What the hell? Why are you leaving? Are you okay? Like, are you on drugs or something? Like, what's going on here?" And I didn't leave Meta because I didn't like it. I actually loved it. It was a cool company. I really enjoyed it. I got a ton of value from it. It doesn't have a great reputation, unfortunately, but being internally, it was an incredible experience, and I got to see really how hard it is for a company at that scale and level of influence to operate. So I enjoyed it. I did some very meaningful things. I got to work on the learning team at Meta, where we were building a learning product on the Facebook app. That was really cool. Worked on the recruiting diversity team, where I was helping increase the number of diverse candidates in the pipeline and increase and level the playing field for them so they can get increasingly better opportunities at companies like Meta. So it's very meaningful work, and I worked with amazing people and learned so much. But at the end of the day, what happened is, we ended up co-founding the startup in January of last year, like almost a year and a half ago. And this was 3 months before we both quit. And at that point, what actually initially started the company was this idea around learn to earn. It was kind of like a way to use Web3 economics like NFTs, crypto, in order to financially incentivize people to learn. That's kind of what gave birth to the startup and a company. And basically that journey of starting that idea and being able to work with you in the journey and everything we were learning together and doing together, it became an obsession. And Meta was a passion. I really enjoyed it. But when something is an obsession, it starts to drain and take energy away from the passion. So as much as I enjoyed Meta and learned a lot, it's black hole. It really did just start to take energy away from me because I was so obsessed about it. So at the end of the day, I knew I was going to jump into startups no matter what. I already got that from my first startup experience. It was just a matter of when, and I felt like I was ready. I felt like this was the right opportunity, felt the time was right. I felt like I was learning way more, and I think a core value for me is to always optimize for learning. So I was like, and made the leap also before we even raised money, which was risky, but I had the confidence we could raise money. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. Let's do it. See what happens. It's kind of what you got to do sometimes, and sometimes you don't learn to swim until you're thrown into the water. So
I mean, that's a great point here in that until you're really in the water, it's hard to know what you're made of. It's hard to know until like the pedal really hits the metal, like what's real, what's not real, if something is going to work, if it's not going to work. It's now been a year and a half since then. It's been, a number of iterations and pivots through different ideas and things. So maybe just as an overview of a bit of that journey, like what are the two biggest maybe lessons you've learned in that time so far as a founder, or like two biggest failures that you've learned from?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, to quickly add on, I think you just need to burn your boat sometimes, because if you have a plan B, that's a safety net you got to eliminate. So that was a big thing too. But so we've pivoted around like 4 times, tested out several ideas here. So a lot of lessons. I feel like I've lived a whole lifetime in the last year with all those pivots. So I would say one of the biggest lessons here that comes to mind is that one of the biggest bets that we took was building the Mindflow social app. That's what our company was called before Wisdolia. It was called Mindflow, and we built a social app. And we spent like 6 months trying to get it to work, and it didn't work. 900 downloads in 6 months. But we were so convinced that this idea was going to work. And a little context, the idea for the Mindflow social app came from a previous pivot where we launched we hosted the Mindflow games. It's like a personal growth competition. People pay, they compete, they do like quests like, hey, do push-ups, write a gratitude letter, da-da-da. They took action. They actually did things. And we saw like, hey, why did they do these things? They did it because the social factor, and also because it was really convenient to take actions with quests, things like that. But anyways, we had some signal that led us to the social app. But I think we made a big jump from like a personal growth competition to a social app, and we assumed a lot of the same things were true. So we had a lot of conviction, basically, that this was going to work. And so what did we do? We raised money. We raised $220K. And then we invested a lot of money into hiring an engineer to provide additional support. And then we brought on an extra marketing agency. And so our burn rate, basically the monthly amount of money we were spending, was $27K, around that amount.
We're trying to pay to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, a lot of money. And the big lesson here was like, holy shit, man, don't try to add fuel to the fire if you haven't even sparked the flame. Like, just light the fire first, and then, add all the fun stuff. But we were trying to like really hard to make this work. Maybe it's a consequence of a social app that maybe you do need that sort of like thing, but I don't know. I think the core thing there is like, what are the fundamental like what is the one core problem we're trying to solve, and what's the smallest solution that we can build to build that one core problem? Because after it didn't work initially, we were trying to iterate and build these sort of additional things that, sure, they were nice and cool, but it still wasn't supporting one core problem. So that's kind of the main thing I would allude to here. And then one other small one, since you asked for two, the very quick one is I'm an engineer, and David's kind of like focuses a lot on design and product. And so we're very build heavy. We like execute, we're relentless, just build shit. Like we work really well together. But as a consequence, there's been multiple instances where we neglect marketing. So, we like build it, launch it, and then we're like, great. Oh shit, we have to market. And I think one of the things we did for Wisdolia, which we'll talk more about later, that was different is that we ended up after we launched, we got really good advice from a mentor, Hubert here from Founders Inc., the incubator we're a part of, to basically, hey, just spend 2 weeks on marketing. Don't do anything else, just marketing for 2 weeks. And for me as an engineer, like seeing a lot of broken things, and maybe for you as a designer, knowing there's a lot of like good product things we could do here, it was really hard not to build for 2 weeks. But it worked. We ended up like getting users and whatnot, but we can talk more about that later. But I think those are the two main lessons that come to mind.
Okay, yeah. I think that's great. I think those are great lessons. And then, you bring us to Wisdolia here. So our current move, our current bet, that we're really excited about, Wisdolia. Like, do you want to give us a quick overview of maybe what it is?
Absolutely. Firstly, props to you for coming up with the name. A little fun story there is that Wisdolia is a derivative of wisdom, and we kind of think of it as like a kingdom of wisdom in a way. But in reality, we just wanted a .com, so David invented a word. So very fun. But Wisdolia is a Chrome extension that uses AI to generate question and answer flashcards for any article, PDF, or YouTube video. Right? So you could be reading an article, watching a YouTube video, just open up an extension, a little app in your Google Chrome, press it, open it, and then you can click a button that says generate flashcards, and that will turn the AI magic on that will take the text or the video that you're looking at and identify the most important parts to generate a set of questions and answers. There's a very basic form of how it works. And why flashcards? So flashcards are a study technique or learning tool that are used by many students. And it's a very popular thing that they use in order to study more effectively. But the core problem that we're kind of tackling here is that many students kind of passively consume information or just reread or take notes verbatim. They're not really using effective study methods here for the most part. And, two main reasons for that are, one, in school, we were told what to learn, but no one ever taught us how to learn. And two, we're lazy, right? We just want to passively consume things like actively engaging with it takes a little bit more effort and time. So one of the active learning techniques, flashcards, is a common study method used by students because it's easy to understand, easy to use, and it does help more than passively consuming information. But as it turns out, they take a ton of effort to create, right? We have one of our power users, Linda, who's in med school, and on average, she spends 10 hours creating 700 flashcards for each of her med school exams. But with Wisdolia, she can do it in minutes. So flashcards are just like the starting point for us, like AI generated, and right now we're saving a lot of time. But the higher level is how do we create better learning efficiency? And we think AI presents a lot of unique opportunities for how to create better 10x solutions and help people become super learners. So it's kind of the overview.
Hell yeah.
Anything you would add there?
I think you paint a great picture there, and we'll get back to the super learner part. But first, I want to jump into a bit of the tactical bits. I think every step of the journey here has its own challenges.
Yeah.
But I think the 0 to 1 step is a particularly daunting one. So maybe you could take us through like how we got our first 100 users.
Yeah, first 100. So I think we got a little lucky to an extent, but it's a good lesson too. How did this idea come to be? Well, one, David and I are super obsessed with learning. We love this space. We've had previous experience in this domain with LinkedIn learning team at Meta. David previously co-founded a learning startup as well and was at Masterclass. So we love learning, and we're building something similar to the flashcards tool, but then we saw a tweet that someone put out on Twitter, and it said, hey, my dream AI product would be for to generate flashcards from any piece of content that I'm consuming. And that tweet blew up, over 500,000 views, 3K likes. And I commented on it and said like, hey, we're building something similar. It'll launch in 2 days. My tweet blew up, like 50 people commented and messaged me like, oh my God, let me know when it launches, da-da-da-da. So we're like, this is a lot of signal. We've been given a gift. We have to build this now. So we did like a 1-day hackathon, 21 hours straight, launched it in a day. It was insane. And from that, the fortunate thing is that now in getting the first 100 users, we could just go and DM people that had engaged with this tweet. So we DM'd a lot of them, and this was like, I think a really important principle of manually recruiting your users, like the one-on-one of like, hey, like notice that you might be interested in this because you engage with this tweet, or notice that you like flashcards or use flashcards to study. Check this out. We just launched it. Would love to get your thoughts. Something like that. Like just manually recruiting your users, do things that don't scale in the beginning. Apart from getting our first 100 users, it got us like 50 pieces of feedback from people in the first week. So we got like really good, like early reactions to what we were building early on. So yeah, that's how we did it.
Yeah, and like you said, we got so much feedback from that. It was really a gift, and those initial users as well. But it came at a bit of a funny cost. I don't know if you wanted to share that.
Oh yeah, so I in total DM'd like over 1,500 people probably. And Twitter didn't like that, so they banned me. And I've appealed it like 3-4 times. Yeah, do things that don't scale can get you in trouble sometimes. But yeah, Twitter, if you're watching this, give me my freaking account back. But I have a new one, Infinite Julian 0. So there we go. But we'll see if we get it back. I have to maybe be friends with Elon first, so we're working on that.
Awesome. Well, super helpful tips there. Generative AI and ChatGPT present really amazing opportunities. One of them is this newfound accessibility to like building things and going from 0 to 1. And now in this past year, there's been so many new generative AI startups, maybe us included. What do you think separates the successful ones from the ones that perish?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, generative AI, just like with any technology, is really exciting. And kind of taking a step back here first, like the way I look at these new technologies is that with AI, generative AI, and even say like VR, AR, crypto, NFTs, I like to think of these different technologies as tools in my tool belt, right? So if you're a builder, constructor, architect, your ability to build something depends on what tools you have in your tool belt and your understanding of how those tools work. The better you know how to use them, navigate them, understand their capabilities, the cooler and more badass and increasingly complex things you can build. Similarly, by understanding these different technologies and their capabilities, it augments your creative potential of what you can build. And that's super important because there's a lot of problems that exist today. And maybe with a new capability or a new tool, a new technology, you're able to solve a problem in a new way that didn't exist before. So bringing this back to generative AI, it's a really, really exciting time because with AI's increased capabilities, thanks to the OpenAI pushing DALL-E, image generation, as well as like text generation and all of these things, it's created insanely new capabilities. But the problem is most people are buying into this hype and just building things that are like cool on the surface, but like what problem is it actually solving? So I think the problem is that many generative AI startups are facing, or just products in general, is that they face a retention problem. They're not really retaining users as well as they could. Why? Because it's cool, but does it long-term actually solve a serious problem that's there? For most Gen AI startups, probably not, and that's a problem. And so for us with retention, it's been challenging, but we've been able to improve like the percentage of people that use Wisdolia on multiple days from 6% to 19% in just a couple weeks. So we have a long way to go in improving retention, but I think the core is, again, what is the technology really good at? What are its capabilities? And how can you use that to solve problems in a unique way?
I love the way you talk about problems and opportunities there. I think, one of those for humans is learning. Humans are essentially learning machines. It's how we've evolved and changed over the years. And, things are changing faster than ever now. So you talk about these tools enabled a whole new world of possibilities. How do you think specifically for learning that AI will transform the learning or the education space?
Oof, yeah, so many ways. Let's see, this is a lot of what we've been thinking about recently. So it's a fun thought experiment. So let's see, firstly, I like to think about this in the way of what is AI, for example, really good at? What are its great capabilities? What is AI really good at? First of all, data is the currency of AI. So an AI's capabilities, a model's capabilities depends on what data you're feeding it. So but what an AI is able to do with good data is that it's able to identify relationships between discrete bits of information. Now, what does that mean in the learning context? It enables this interesting use case around personalized learning, where if an AI knows what I'm learning or what I know, and it's able to see what am I currently learning right now? What is this idea? And what do I know? What have I learned in the past? The AI can try to draw relationships between what I know and what I'm trying to learn right now. And those relationships are really natural to the learning science of how we learn as people. So connecting dots together, linking your thinking is something AI can be really good at for learning. The other is in getting immediate feedback, right? Just think of like the magic of ChatGPT. You're able to ask any question, immediately get an answer that's really good. Now, how do we best learn as humans? It's by being able to like communicate what we don't know, ask a question, and get an immediate answer. This is why people love going to tutors, paying tutors, going to a TA, asking professors a question, because it's a really immediate way to communicate what you don't understand and get an answer. So AI, again, can really play to this effect of being able to identify, hey, your answer to this question, here's what you got right, here's what you understood, here's what you didn't understand, and here's what you maybe did not consider. Immediate feedback instead of doing an exam and getting the feedback a week later and you not caring anymore. So those are a few ways I really see it playing a big role here. There's others, but those are maybe two of the ones I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I love that. Learning is one of the biggest problems, but besides that, I know you're a big thinker, and there's so many problems, or maybe better said, opportunities in our world today. So what maybe is one of the core problems that's just on your mind nowadays?
Yeah, well, there's so many because there's so many problems, opportunities in the world. But one I find myself thinking more and more about over time is basically a problem very related to the fast-moving world with AI. It's basically that we live in an exponential age today. And in this exponential age, the only constant is change, and the rate of change itself is accelerating. Faster computers are helping to build faster computers. AI gets better, and AI helps build better AI, and that increases productivity and computation and everything, and it becomes way more insane. So the World Economic Forum just last month released a report saying that 23% of jobs are going to be displaced within the next 5 years. I honestly think it could probably be more, but can you imagine that? At least a quarter of jobs being displaced in the next few years. Additionally, they said 84 million jobs are going to be lost, displaced, and 69 million new ones are going to be created out of an analysis of 674 million jobs or something like that. Basically, there's more jobs that are going to be displaced than the new ones that are being created. So I think a lot of like, how are we going to prepare for this exponential world? Most people don't even realize how fast the world is moving. And I think in this exponentially changing times, what matters most, maybe the most future-proof skill you can acquire is your ability to adapt to change really quick. And really what this means is that the need for learning has never been greater. And that's also, I think, connecting to Wisdolia and what we're doing. What makes me so excited is a lot of what we aim to do is create super learners that are able to retain and understand anything 10 times better and faster. And if we can do that, we become more adaptable to the changing times. And I think it enables us to become exponential individuals during an exponential age.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
I'm down.
Rally.
But now I think it'd be fun if we transition into just doing some quick lightning round questions, if that's cool with you.
Oh shit! All right, damn. What you got stored there?
All right. Favorite founder, go.
Favorite founder. Okay. I would probably.
Wrong answer.
I know this is controversial, but Elon Musk. I like Elon a lot. He's been very inspirational.
Okay. Favorite book?
Man's Search for Meaning.
Classic. Do you think the world is a simulation?
100%. No, I'm kidding. Like 99%, probably, more than likely.
Fascinating. If you could live forever, would you?
Yes, because I am infinite. But I would want the caveat of being able to click like the exit button if I wanted to. If I didn't have that button, I'd be a little more doubtful. But yeah, life's awesome. Why not live forever?
Beautiful. And just to round us out here, final question is, what do you think being an entrepreneur has taught you about life?
Whoa. So much. I think there's so many analogies and lessons you can draw between the two, but I think the biggest one is how it teaches you about grit, perseverance, the ability to not take no for an answer, to like accept and deal with rejection. These are all core things to startups. And in a startup, you're constantly getting knocked on your freaking face. You're getting punched. You're getting rejected. It can feel awful at times. And the same is true in life. You're just going to get knocked down. Maybe in startup lives, you get knocked down more. But so it's good in that it helps you build more resilience. But in general, I think what it really teaches me is that you have to learn to become comfortable with discomfort. I think that's one of the greatest superpowers, because life is full of discomfort in many ways, but there's a lot of growth behind discomfort. So if you find comfort in the discomfort, you become a champion of growth in many ways. And I think startups teach you that at a very deep level. And they also teach you that, hey, you're going to do a lot of things. You're going to fail. Most of the ideas you try are not going to succeed. Any idea has 10% chance or less than succeeding, probably way less. So you're going to have to take a lot of shots on goal in order to score. And I think the same is true for life, right? In finding a partner or in getting a job that you really like. It's a lot of rejections, a lot of shots on goals, a lot of iterations. You got to try new shit, see what works, what doesn't, what resonates with you, what doesn't. So I don't know. There's a million analogies I could draw, but I constantly take inspiration from startups to achieve deeper thinking in life and understanding of the universe.
Wisdom drop.
Yes.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure being your host today, and hopefully giving everyone a deeper dive into the inventor of inventing the future.
Whoa, damn. That's a good one. You thought about that one, maybe. But no, thank you. You did great on your first podcast interview. Great job being on the other side. And no, super, super grateful to be on this journey as well with you, building shit together. We've learned so much together. We've been through so much. In many ways, it is only the beginning. So really excited to see what we can continue to build here. So thanks for the beautiful questions and the time.
Let's do it.
Hell yeah. Yeehaw. I will catch you all later. And yeah, thank you all for listening.